Welcome to Americana Archives. Today's headline is Stories of the War, How the Rebels Old Lee, Jackson, and Longstreet. The subheadline says, Wade in 48, an incident of the Battle of Sharpsburg, why a brave old Confederate colonel became riled. This article originally came from Sarge in the Atlanta Constitution. It says, It would be mighty hard to find a man that served in the Virginia Army that don't love Lee, Jackson, and Longstreet. Thus spoke Old Man Plunkett, as he stooped and dipped his pipe in the ashes, and then resuming his easy position in his armchair, he proceeded. Whenever you heard of Jackson making a telling dash in the rear of the Yankees, you might be sure that Longstreet had done some bulldog fighting in front. That's the way it was, and every Confederate soldier that went with Lee from Seven Pines to Spotsylvania will tell you the same thing. Later on, we had the hills, and the soldiers would tell the Yankees that they had two hills to pass over, a Longstreet to trample, and a Stonewall to climb, before they'd get to Richmond. But without disparagement to any, it was Lee first, and then Jackson and Longstreet, that the soldiers of the Virginia Army looked to and loved the best. Colonels, brigadiers, and major generals came in for their share of the affections of the soldiers, and every company fought it had the best captain, every regiment the best colonel, every brigade the best brigadier, every division the best major general. And Longstreet's corps fought Longstreet the best, and Jackson's corps fought Jackson the best, while all fought Lee the greatest and best that had ever lived, or that would ever live. And so it went, and I guess it was all right. I remember once, continued Plunkett, after stopping a moment to relight his pipe. Near Orange Courthouse the boys were halted on the road, and some went to one side and some to the other, and were sitting down before I could tell you about it, for it didn't take a tired soldier long to find a place to sit. That General Lee soon appeared on his gray horse, and as he did, the boys began to rise to their feet and to wave their hats and holler. And General Lee, he pulled off his hat and rode along with the sun broiling down on his bare head, and he didn't say a word till the boys got enthused, so that the road was about to be blockaded. And then he checked his horse to keep him from stepping on some of them, and bellowed, I love you all, let me pass, my old war horse, Longstreet is just behind, and you must save some of your greeting for him. And Lee hadn't more than got 100 or 2 yards before Longstreet did appear, and he had a poor sick soldier that had straggled up behind him on his horse, and he stopped at a wagon and told him to haul off the soldier, and as he passed along, there was no man in that division who would have swapped him for any other general they'd ever heard of, and I think they were about right. But, continued Plunkett, lighting his pipe for the third time, Jackson's men were just as big of fools over him, and I think they were right too. And the brigadiers were liked, and the colonels were liked, and the captains were liked, and the men liked one another. And everyone thought his company and his regiment was the best. And I think they were about right in that, for they were all the best. But I saw one old colonel get riled once, and it liked to have caused a right smart trouble afterwards. It was at Sharpsburg, continued Plunkett, after making 2 or 3 efforts to puff smoke from his unlighted pipe. And things were mighty hot. General Rantzwright's brigade rose from behind a rock fence, fixed bayonets, and started for the top of a hill, where some Yankee cannons were planted, and the Yankees saw they were going to lose their guns if they didn't stir mighty fast, and they stirred. General Wright was as brave as he could be, and he stood his ground with the Yankee infantry that came to meet him as long as he could. But he saw they were going to kill all his men, so he gave orders to fall back. The brigade fell back slowly, tightening all the way. The Yankees pressed, and General Wright was compelled to hurry up a little on his backward move. And in the confusion, when the balance of the brigade made a halt with the determination to go back no further, the 48th Georgia did not hear or understand, and so kept back till they arrived at the fence from whence the brigade first started, which by the way was only a few feet. The mistake was soon discovered by the colonel of the 48th, and he at once ordered his regiment forward in line with the balance of the brigade. And at the instant of getting formed in his place, General Wright fell, badly wounded. The 48th's colonel was the senior colonel, and as brave and good a man as ever fought for the Confederacy. And as General Wright was wounded, he was next in command, and he rushed immediately to the general's side and asked, General, what will you have me to do? Keep your regiment away from the fence and up with the 3rd Georgia, was General Wright's reply. The balls were flying thick and fast, and it was hot times, but that old colonel didn't care. He pulled off his hat and waved his sword, and his voice was distinct above the roar of battle. General Wright is wounded, and I'm in command. Wade in 48th, God Almighty. If you ever saw fighting, it was there, and if there was ever a better regiment or braver set of officers in the Confederacy than the old 48th, I never saw them nor heard of them. And General Wright and the old colonel were the best of friends. But that 3rd Georgia was always hollering around, Wade in 48th, until it mighty nigh caused trouble. But it was all for fun, and there were mighty few of the brave fellows that charged from that rock fence that lived to the surrender, and that's what makes me say that war is a bad, bad thing. After a while, though, continued Plunkett, others came in for their share of the honor and esteem. Ewell, Early, Stewart, Gordon, and many others, and I could tell you were right smart about all of these that will never be told in books. But these youngsters that have come up since the war call me cranky and say I ought to wear knee breeches, and I've got so I don't like to talk. Gordon, continued Plunkett after a short pause, had a fellow in his old brigade that I haven't heard of since the war, and I'd like mighty well to know what became of him. Gordon's Bull, he was called. I think he belonged to the 13th Georgia Regiment, and if I were to tell you how this man could holler, you'd not believe it. But you know it's 7 miles across the East Tennessee Railroad, and I'll bet you might put Gordon's Bull over there and let one of the big engines blow its whistle and let him holler, and you could hear his voice above the locomotive. I've heard of that fellow, said Brown, speaking for the first time, and he was red-headed. Yes, continued Plunkett, taking no notice of Brown's interruption. You could always tell where Gordon's brigade was by that fellow's holler, and I think that after Gordon got up higher, he exempted him from duty just on account of his voice. He could call the brigade together any time they got scattered, and it was always a joyful sound to the broken-down straggler that had fallen behind during the day and, overtaken by darkness, footsore, and hungry, found his way to camp by the guidance of this wonderful man's voice. This story came from the great state of Massachusetts, being reported in the Boston Sunday Globe of February 12, 1888. Thank you for joining us today. If you want to continue to uncover all of America's lost and forgotten history, then remember before you leave to hit the subscribe button, hit the notification bell, and remember to like and comment below. And we will see you next time on Americana Archives.